And now it's time for something crustaceous.
Science and atoms and clever things that I'm doing. What?
Tell me why!
That's right, welcome to Tell Me Why, where we invite a sharp elementary school student to ask us a big question about the universe or to teach us something important about the world. This week we're joined by 11-year-old Eli, who's fascinated by evolution, and Hans Thewissen, a scientist who knows all about it. Eli, thanks for being here. You went to the beach last week, I'm told, and you encountered something that got you thinking about evolution, right? What did you find?
Well, I found there was a large, very big horseshoe crab that had washed up on the beach, and it was still alive and everything. It was pretty interesting, and it got me thinking because, of course, horseshoe crabs are pretty much living fossils. They've lived so much longer than humans or any other race, and they haven't changed virtually at all. And so how does that happen? They're not special in any ways, kind of odd creatures actually, but they've been able to survive for so long, and they're really pretty amazing.
Yeah, do you have any idea how old they are, Eli?
Well, I do know they were 200 million years older than humans are, so
That's old. You know, I'm coming from Australia, I'd never even seen a horseshoe crab until I saw pictures of your horseshoe crab, because we don't have them back down in Australia. In Australia, all the crabs have 8 legs. I've never seen these crazy little critters. But
Wow.
Hans, do you want to take that question? Why has this organism survived for hundreds of millions of years?
Sure. For starters, they're actually not crabs. They're more closely related to spiders than to crab, right? Okay.
Crustacean.
But they certainly look like, they behave like crabs in terms of that they live in the ocean.
Yeah.
The oldest ones are about 230 million years old. So that's very old. Of course, for those, we only have fossils. So there's a lot of things we can tell from a fossil. There's also a lot of things we can't tell. So there might be things that have changed in horseshoe crabs.
Right.
We can't tell in the DNA and stuff.
Yeah.
And I don't know why horseshoe crabs haven't changed. I'm thinking that it must be that they're doing so well in their present shape that there was no reason for them to evolve.
Mm-hmm.
Probably 230 million years, the same kinds of things that the modern ones do, and they never needed to change.
Yeah.
That's the answer to the question.
That's probably because in the ocean, of course, many things have changed as a whole. Like, sure, submarines and whatever have gone down there, but nothing has permanently changed very much as like some things on land. And so maybe it had changed so little that they could still fit in their surroundings pretty well.
Yeah, I think it's lucky for a lot of the creatures in the sea that humans are land-based mammals, because 70% of the ocean of the planet is ocean, and obviously we don't spend as much time screwing up the ocean as we do on land. But the cool thing about these that I think was an interesting point that you raised, Eli, is, you know, we sometimes think of evolution as being a progression from one species to another, to another, to another. And you make the good point that that's not entirely how it works. If a species works in its own niche and it has its own little horseshoe crab niche that's working for it, it'll just keep on surviving. It doesn't have to necessarily keep changing into anything else.
Right, yeah.
Yeah.
And I also wonder if, of course, horseshoe crabs aren't crabs, but they are crustaceans. And they don't really belong to any class like most crabs do. They are entirely on their own usually. And if they were related to other animals much before our time, but those animals weren't as easily, they didn't adapt, and so they died out, leaving the horseshoe crab the last of their kind.
Huh. Hans, one of your specialties, of course, is whale evolution. What do whales tell us about evolution in particular?
Yeah.
Well, I think what's interesting with regard to the comparing whales and horseshoe crabs is, if you think about whales, they originated about 50 million years ago. And for the first 10 million years, they were really experimenting, and you had whales that looked like otters, you had whales that looked like crocodiles, you had whales that looked like seals. And then as around 40 million years, they hit the perfect body plan, a body plan where their front legs looked like flippers, they didn't have any back legs, and the tail became this big triangular fluke, or horizontal fin. And when they invented that, all these other kinds of whales that were, these animals that were whales but didn't look like modern whales, went extinct. So there was this early phase between 50 and 40 million years when there was a lot of experimenting and a lot of evolution with different body shapes. And then when they hit the perfect shape that is still with us, that's what they start with for the next. So evolution really slowed down there. So it shows you that even within one group, you can have periods when there is very fast evolution, phases of experimentation with body shapes, and then there might be long periods of not much evolution at all.
Right. And whales, a lot of whales are becoming endangered. So do you think they'll adapt more and change more in the coming years?
I think that some species are quite badly threatened and probably will not survive, whereas others will. I think with as fast as the climate is changing, mostly induced by humans, most species will not be able to keep up with evolution. I study some whales in northern Alaska, bowhead whales and beluga whales. They only live in the Arctic. Well, the Arctic, the ice in the Arctic is melting, so it doesn't look particularly good for them. However, there's other species that are becoming more common, that are maybe more opportunistic. Killer whales is a good example of a species of whale that does much better.
Yeah.
Eli, there were these scientists in Japan who found a dolphin which had legs a couple of years ago. And Hans, correct me if I'm wrong, but as I understand it, when dolphins are embryos, they grow legs, just like humans when they're in the womb grow like tails and all kinds of things that are still relics from our old prehistoric past, from our evolutionary ancestors. And then by the time we're born, we look like humans. Well, there was one of these dolphins that was deformed in such a way that he still retained its legs. Can you imagine a whale or a dolphin having legs?
No. Wow.
It's kind of cool. The other cool thing that I want to show you is I was last year at the New Yorker Festival where they have all these cool scientists talk and different artists talk. I saw Richard Dawkins, who's a great evolutionary biologist who works at Cambridge University, I believe, in the UK. And he was talking about how if you think about our ancestors going way back into time, of course, we share a common ancestor with whales and dolphins if you go back far enough. So take a look at this little clip from the seminar that I was at. It's Richard Dawkins talking about a thought experiment that he does with people to help them think about their evolutionary ancestry.
Okay.
What we're looking at here is a thought experiment in which the reader is invited to take a photograph of herself, an ordinary picture postcard, place it on a table, then take a photograph of her father, father's father, father's father's father, you can do it mother, whichever you like, and then go on and go on and go on, stacking these photographs into an ever higher pile. So who really was the first person? And I begin with a slightly paradoxical answer that there never was a first person, because every animal, every person ever born belonged to the same species as its parents. You can take that back as far as you like, and I take it back to 185 million generations ago. You turn over the page and you reveal that your 185 million great-grandfather was a fish.
So Eli, if we had enough time for me to say your great, and if I could say the word great 185 million times, then your great-grandfather was a fish.
Wow, yeah. I mean, that definitely makes sense because there were, of course, animals, and we are definitely not the first ones. And that means all of the other newer species are also from the same kind of animals that were older. And so I guess that definitely does make sense.
Yeah.
But
Why
I
do
wonder
you...
what those animals animals were. Like,
Well, I can understand my great-great-great-great-grandfather being a fish because I love swimming because I'm Australian, so it makes sense. But Eli, why do you think that humans became so much more intelligent than a lot of other animals?
I think as they progressed, they weren't that much smarter than other animals, than some other animals. But then I'm assuming they used that to put themselves over other animals, and so they were able to learn more and more and become more intelligent and more intelligent. And through that, we eventually came to the place we are now, where we're really the main thing on this earth, and there are other animals, but we're the dominant race, I guess you could say.
Hans, intelligence, I suppose, is a loaded term. I probably shouldn't use it because we're a fairly new species, and when you look at species that have been around for hundreds of millions of years, one could make the case that they're more intelligent at surviving than we have proven ourselves to be so far. But clearly we're good tool makers in a way that many other species aren't. To what can we attribute that?
Well, I first want to point out that we are the most intelligent, or the largest brain species on the planet for only 2 million years. Before that, the largest species with the largest brain were actually dolphins. So I just got to point that out since I study dolphins. And now I forget your question.
To what do we attribute? Why do we have such big brains?
Oh, well, there's a whole bunch of, it's probably a whole bunch of reasons. Two of the most important ones that keep coming back and back is that we have very complex social relations with other humans, and that requires intelligence to manage those. Another one is that once we started to work on our hind limbs only, our hands became free to do all kinds of other things like making tools, complex tasks that also to drive those hands and foresee what you can do with them when you're not using them for locomotion, helped our brains get, or it required bigger brains to run those hands so we could use all those facilities.
Interesting. Eli, what do you want to do when you get older? Do you know what work you want to do?
No, not really. I'd like to be a writer, entomologist. A lot of things are interesting, really.
Maybe you could write science books and popularize science ideas. You're really good at explaining them.
Yeah, thank you. Well, that would be an interesting job.
Do you think that people will evolve to get smarter and stronger, Eli, or do you think that we're going to stay the same, or do you think we're going to all die, or what?
I think probably a lot of races, like Hans said, will not have the chance to evolve, and they'll probably die out before they do. But some will, and I guess humans will have to evolve with them if they're going to survive, so that they're still the dominant race. And so I think that's going to take millions of years, probably, but I think it's going to happen eventually.
Well,
because,
yeah, carry on.
Oh, I was just saying because as we think more and have more opportunity, our lives will get harder and harder until it's so hard that we fall into chaos. And when that happens, it'll be the chance for other animals to evolve and go over us. And so when that happens, I think we're going to probably evolve, some of us, and the others will just die out, really.
Well, I can't wait to see the day. Eli, I think you're great. I think you're brilliant. I can't wait to get a beer with you when you're old enough. Hans, thanks so much for being here to answer our questions. Look forward to talking to you again next time.
My pleasure.
Yeah.
Thanks. You can let us know what you think about all this, of course, by leaving a comment in the comment well. You can find links to interesting articles in the resource well. This is HuffPost Live.